At the Center for Better Bones, we're all about changing the way women think about bone health and the way women are treated. We're about to revolutionize bone health, moving towards a natural bone health maximization. If you like what I have to say, be sure to subscribe and be sure to look into our social media and even join our tribe. We have hundreds of like-minded people who are gathering together to share their experiences. Today, I'm going to give you my Susan's 3 for this week. And these are interesting little research topics that people often ask me about. The first question is coffee. The question is coffee damaging my bone? If you've read my book, The Acid Alkaline Food Guide, you know that coffee is a bit acid forming. But as it turns out, in the big picture, coffee actually helps bone as it appears. And this is because of all the polyphenol plant compounds in coffee. There's hundreds of compounds in coffee, and many of them are strong antioxidants, strong anti-inflammatories, called polyphenol compounds. So a large British study actually looked at coffee, and they found that for every additional cup of coffee, there was a 4% decreased risk of hip fracture. This was in women like 35 to 65. So coffee actually can help prevent fracture. Now, you may be like me, I'm extremely sensitive to coffee. There's certain genetic types that are very sensitive to caffeine. And so I can't take coffee, but it's interesting if you might ask me about tea. Tea has much lower caffeine. You might say, is tea good for bones? And the same British study, which we're going to give you the reference to here, showed that people who drank tea, actually every additional cup of tea also provided a significant benefit for bone. That is a 4% reduction in hip fracture for every additional cup of tea. So drinking teas, coffee in this case, and green tea, black tea and green tea, is shown to have a significant benefit for bone. And we know it's because of the plant phenolic compounds. Like we emphasize quercetin is really an amazing plant phenolic compound. Well, caffeine has many, coffee and tea have many other plant compounds that are really beneficial, stimulate osteoblasts. Particularly beneficial is green tea. Green tea, because of its content of a substance called ECGC, really helps to stimulate those bone building cells and quiet down the bone breakdown cells. So if I had my choice, I would drink green tea, but just know that it's okay to have some coffee and okay to have some tea. You want to have plenty of vegetables so your pH stays in a good balance and that your first morning urine is always 6.5 to 7.5. Tea and coffee are fine. Now, how about protein? People often ask me, how much protein? And there is a big awareness now as far as muscle maintenance and trying to maintain muscle as you age. You probably all know that the average person loses about 45% of their muscle and their bone as they go from 35 to 85 or 90. So we want to maintain muscle and bone as we age, and certainly protein intake is important. Bone is about half protein by volume. And so even in the alkaline diet, I always say we don't want to use excessive protein, but we certainly need to use the amount of protein required to keep bones healthy. Now, in this British study, they looked at protein. This is a very large study. I'll give you the link here. And what they found is that if you increase protein by 25 grams, that's like a good serving of fish or chicken or turkey, whatever. If you increase the protein by 25 grams, you would reduce fracture risk substantially, probably by, in the average person, about 14% reduction in hip fracture. So that's a pretty impressive reduction. 14% reduction in hip fracture if the average person increased their protein by 25 grams. Now, if you're already eating one serving of fish, you got to have 25 grams more. So the beans, the flesh food, the eggs, the dairy is helpful, and many people use protein powders. Now, if you're underweight, it's quite striking. If you're underweight and you add 25 grams of protein, you reduce your risk of hip fracture by 45%. That's just about halving your hip fracture risk by increasing protein. So over and over again, I'm trying to emphasize to you, and this new study really again solidifies the fact that protein is very essential for bone, Particularly, we see the problem with vegetarians. Just saw another new piece of research showing that vegetarians have higher fracture risk as compared to people who even eat occasional meat. And partly that has to do with this low protein content. So don't hesitate to think about additional protein, about protein powders if you have to do it, if you don't want to eat any sort of flesh food. But protein is extremely important. If you're underweight, increase your protein by 25 grams. That's like one serving, a good serving of a fish, chicken, or turkey, or lots of beans and rice. Or if you're regular weight, you will reduce your fracture risk by about 14% by just increasing protein. So let's keep in mind, we want the pH to be alkaline, but we want adequate protein. And certainly coffee is pretty fine, and green tea, all teas are really quite good. Well, have fun with all this. I hope you enjoy looking forward to the new year. We're planning lots of fun, including a New Year resolution challenge. So we'll be talking to you soon. In the meantime, have a great afternoon.